So I'm asking myself these questions about Donald Trump only from the standpoint that if we sit back and we allow this to happen, if we let him continue to get away with this kind of verbiage and these kind of actions that appears to lean towards authoritarianism, where does that leave us?
If they're saying that he is acting in a nature that's not geared toward or appropriate for his position, then I also ask people to say, what exactly is he doing? Is he saying that black people shouldn't be able to live in Chicago? Is he hurting black people and saying black people shouldn't be able to go to schools, or he's doing something to thwart the black community? He's saying, I want the community to be safe. I'm deploying these people to help young brothers not get murdered every day in the streets. I don't think he's doing anything against black folks. It's that we don't have enough black folks standing up that are in positions of power to do this. Why does Trump have to do it?
Welcome back to Straight Shooter with Stephen A., the one and only Officer Tatum. What's going on, big time? How are you, man? How's everything?
I'm blessed, Stephen A., man. Thank you for having me back on.
Man, please. It's really, really good to see you, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Let's get right to it, man. I'm reading an article for the New York Times yesterday, right? And the title is Trump Tramples Congress's Power with Little Challenge from the GOP. That was the title of the article, Officer Tatum. It talked about, one, the Pentagon barred the senior Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee from making an oversight visit to a military spy agency. Armed forces off the coast of Venezuela began a military campaign against alleged members of a drug cartel without any authorization from Congress. Stuff like this. Has the president lost his damn mind, or is this totally within bounds, according to your thinking?
Well, good question. As far as I know, the president is acting according to his authority and executive power to do some of these things and act out military action if it's if it goes against, or not say goes against the interests, but if it's a direct threat to the interests of America, he has the executive authority to take action. And I'm open to somebody making a better argument to say that he doesn't. I'm open to the courts giving some guidance in his direction. And if he's wrong, he's wrong. I'll call him out for being wrong. But as it stands right now, there is no court that have deemed that Donald Trump is acting beyond the capability that he has as the commander-in-chief of the United States military. And I also agree with what he's doing. It's time that somebody takes some doggone action. More often than not, these people just run their mouth and say what they woulda, coulda, shoulda did, but nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody's doing anything about the crime in D.C. until Donald Trump does something. Nobody's doing anything about the drug cartels bringing massive amounts of drugs into America until Donald Trump decides to do something about it. So how about they get off their high horse and quit trying to, I guess, make an issue out of a non-issue at this point and start standing behind the president and protecting America. If there is a congressional issue here, Congress need to get off their butts and start getting to work and start acting on behalf of the American people. We shouldn't have to wait 25 years for them to come to a resolution to save lives and stop drugs from coming into America, Stephen A. We shouldn't wait 1,000 years for them to give guidance on whether or not we should shut our borders or not. We shouldn't have to wait 1,000 years for them to do anything and argue back and forth and get nothing done in order for Donald Trump to activate the National Guard in D.C., which brought crime down by a tremendous amount. And I think he's trying to do it, or he want to work towards doing something like that in Chicago, which I think is a great idea.
Hey, y'all, hold on real quick. I got to tell you this. I bet you $1 million y'all didn't know this. Only 3 mobile providers on all of the cell phone towers in America. When you work with Patriot Mobile, you can pick one of the providers that work best for you. And that's the uniqueness of Patriot Mobile. Switch to the only Christian conservative provider today. All you got to do is go to patriotmobile.com/Tatum or call 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with promo code Tatum.
Listen, when for the bare bones of it all, when we think about crime, when we think about some of the things that plague our nation, both domestically and globally, clearly you look at some of the things that you're doing, he's saying, hey, okay, he's doing it expeditiously. He's handling it with the quickness. We don't need to wait around and have things lagging for years and years. The reason why I'm kind of surprised at any conservative, including yourself, who speaks on things in such unapologetic support of his maneuvering is we usually hear conservatives bringing up the Constitution, how things are supposed to be done, how we have a judicial branch, an executive branch, et cetera, et cetera. And when you're bypassing those things, and by the way, in fairness to him, it ain't just him. Democrats have done that too. Biden did it. Obama did it. And I'll get into that in a little while. But the fact that he's acting in the way that he's acting, doing things from a unilateral perspective, that doesn't concern you, considering the nation that we live in and how there's supposed to be lines of checks and balances, and he seems to be bypassing things from time to time? That doesn't concern you?
No, it does to a certain degree, right? If there's things that are clearly within his authority, and this is what checks and balances is all about. It's not just checks and balances, meaning that um, there's a clear precedent that has been set for certain things. Let me just give you an example of what I'm
Okay.
trying to say. So you have, congressional authority for certain things. Well, there's blurred lines here and there when it comes to Donald Trump acting in the best interest of America if we're under attack, or if we're at war, or things that he determined to be necessary. And so there is an ongoing argument about whether or not that's constitutionally protected, whether or not he has to essentially go through Congress to get these things done. And that constitutional argument is going to happen from the Supreme Court. And then there's going to be decisions that are made. And if Donald Trump is not acting according to the Constitution of the United States of America, I think there should be recourse and consequences for that. The things that he's doing right now, I don't think is a constitutional issue, and it hadn't been deemed a constitutional issue by the Supreme Court. But if it does, meaning that him going unilaterally making the decision to strike, the Venezuelan gang members for bringing drugs into America, obviously we know he's constitutionally allowed to activate the National Guard in DC. That's not even up for question. But some of these other unilateral things that we've seen Donald Trump do, if it's deemed by the Supreme Court to be unconstitutional, then we should hold Donald Trump accountable to it. The problem is that there's an argument, and this is how constitutional law comes into play, or this is how precedent comes into play, and this is how what they would call a standing for court proceedings. I'm trying to think of the word, but it's escaping me right now.
Okay.
Where you have legislation, or not legislation, but you have rulings from the Supreme Court that creates a precedent. Just like with the First Amendment, just like with discrimination, you have things that happen, you have a conversation that's had, then you have a ruling from the Supreme Court that dictate how we should operate.
Okay.
And I think that what Trump is doing right now is in the blurred lines. It seems like there's some people that think it's a constitutional crisis and some people that think that it isn't, but the Supreme Court should make the ultimate ruling, okay. And then that's what we should abide by, right or wrong for Donald Trump. If they say that it's unconstitutional, I don't support him doing it. Mm-hmm. But until then, I support him taking action that's benefiting America.
I can respect that. Officer Tatum right here with Stephen A., straight shooter with Stephen A. Here's the deal. I'm not going to get too riled up about some of the things he's doing, particularly with the Venezuelan drug cartel or whatever. I'm just looking back in history, foreign policy without Congress's approval. Obama in 2011 involving Libya conducted airstrikes and regime change operations in Libya without congressional authorization. Many said that violated the War Powers Act. Obama's drone strikes targeted killings in Yemen, Pakistan, and Somalia, often conducted without informing or seeking approval from Congress. Biden in 2021 involving Syria ordered airstrikes in Syria against Iranian-backed militia without congressional approval. So there are examples in that regard. Let's come home to the United States of America. You brought up the National Guard on a couple of occasions when you were just speaking a few minutes ago. Washington, D.C., we both agree on that. There's nothing to debate there. That basically they're run by the federal government. He's perfectly within his right and his authority to do what he's doing in the streets of Washington, D.C. One could argue that is not the case in Los Angeles, California, when he sent the National Guard there and 700 Marines there. One could argue it's not the case in Baltimore, which he's threatened to send the National Guard there. You can certainly argue that's not the case in Chicago, where, obviously these are cities, big time cities. And we know there's a lot of problems. Both you and I both know there's a whole bunch of boatload of problems in Chicago. Ain't no argument there. But his right to send the National Guard in, the governors will tell you they are the commanders in chief of their respective. He has no right to do this without their authorization and without their support. To all of that, you say what about the threats that Donald Trump has been throwing?
A great question, Stephen A. I think this is stuff that we should be discussing.
Yeah.
I think people are conflating two different things.
Okay.
The activation of the National Guard in LA wasn't an activation of the National Guard against the citizens. They weren't doing any law enforcement action. What they were doing was they were being activated to protect the federal assets, meaning that they were there to protect ICE. They were there to protect the facilities that are run by the federal government. So the activation had nothing to do with any police action or anything against the citizens. It was literally the protection of federal assets. And that's the same. Similarly, I say differently, the threats in Chicago and in other states are different from what happened in LA, but they can be correlated, which means that Donald Trump can deploy the National Guard or activate the National Guard if it's necessary to protect ICE agents who are doing lawful actions within the state. So that is his authority to do. That's something that he can do, he should do if it is necessary. I would argue that Trump should not do anything close to that unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, there's an act, it's called the Insurrection Act,
Okay.
where he can activate the National Guard for purposes outside of, protecting government assets or federal operations. He can actually do it to deploy them into the street, quell violence that's going on. Now, that's a high burden to prove. I don't believe at this point that Chicago is in the realm of having the Insurrection Act deployed. I think Trump do not have the right to do it, and I don't think he should do it. Now, the governor does have the authority, and the governor is the commander-in-chief of the state, except for the Insurrection Act and things of that nature. They should come together as two leaders to have a conversation. The problem is that Pritzker and some of these other governors, they want political expediency and they want political talking points, and they don't want Trump to get a win, and they don't want to look bad to the constituency. So they don't even want to talk to the man. But what should happen in a reasonable society is that people in Chicago, the governor, the mayors, the governor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago should be able to sit down at the table with Donald Trump and say, we do have issues of violence. How do we work together? It's not Trump just deploying the National Guard, thwarting the authority or thwarting the will of the governor and the mayor. I don't think it should go that way. I think they should have a conversation that could be had. No one in America, unless they're completely ignorant, would argue that Chicago isn't a problem. And
Chicago's
it's not
a
all
big
of
ass
Chicago.
problem. Chicago's a big damn
It's
problem.
the
Ain't no
inner
question about
cities
it.
where our people live that we see 70 shootings over the week. Like, that's too much, man. And Stephen A., it's not even just that. It's not just the shootings, bro. It's the school system. It's the young brothers without fathers, young brothers incarcerated that get out and recidivate. It's young brothers that don't have no hope in Chicago in many cases. This is why we see the violence. There was a young man that came out and said Donald Trump shouldn't deploy the National Guard. And he wasn't making a threat. He was just saying that the YNs, they call them, in Chicago and some of these other areas are violent. They will fight back. There will be a lot of death that happened as a result of this deployment. And so what I would say to that, Stephen A., to try to shorten it up a little bit, I know I'm long-winded sometimes, but I think that they should come together. I don't want to see Donald Trump unilaterally make the decision to deploy the National Guard. I like that he threatened it. I like that he's calling out these mayors and governors so the people can start paying attention to what's really going on. And the people can see that your governor really don't have a vested interest in helping you. Because why all of a sudden are they saying, no, we have crime under control. Oh, we have deployed this measure. Oh, we are doing this. Where have y'all been for the last 30 years? We're 40 or 50 years. Where have y'all been? Well, they would say Donald Trump to threaten the National Guard to get people to, at least the politicians, to try to do something in Chicago.
But Governor Westmore in Maryland would say things have gotten better and the numbers prove it. Mayor Johnson in Chicago and Governor Pritzker would say the numbers have gotten better. Certainly, it's still a problem, but we are showing that we're addressing it because the numbers have dissipated. And I guess what I would ask, and this is why, because I respect you so much and I wanted you on the show, as Black men, when we know it's a problem in Chicago. We know it's a problem in D.C. We ain't blind. There ain't no question about it. We got that part. The flip side to it is that even though it might be a leftist, propaganda machine that's talking about authoritarianism when they mention Donald Trump, even though that might be some of their agendas, sometimes it doesn't seem false because of how he comes at it. And the one question I'm asking myself is, A, does he really warrant our trust? We don't have anybody. We don't see anybody that looks like us as a member of his cabinet. I don't see anybody like that. We see unemployment, even though it's not awful. The bottom line is it's worse for Black folks than it is for anybody else. I don't see him helping that. So I'm asking myself these questions about Donald Trump only from the standpoint that if we sit back and we allow this to happen, Officer Tatum, then what's going to stop the precedent from being reset? Because if he's doing it now and he's getting away with it, what about his successor, whoever that may be? It could be a J.D. Vance, could be a Marco Rubio, or assuming the Democrats don't get their act together and they're going to lose another election, not just the midterm, but the presidency in 2028. If we let him continue to get away with this kind of verbiage and these kind of actions that appears to lean towards authoritarianism, where does that leave us? To that you ask, and I'm talking about us as Black people. You answer that in what way, sir?
Yeah, great question. I think that, what we have to evaluate is, you know, the numbers that they present. They're not, ask people who live in Chicago. Do you think Chicago's crime is down 20%, 15%, whatever percentage they present? Go to Philly, go to anywhere in the hood where black people live, where you can get, people know it's crazy out there. People are terrified to live there. Grandma and them, these young brothers, they're using young brothers now, Stephen A., to commit crimes because they're lighter on crime for juveniles. So they got our young brothers out here robbing people and killing people and shooting, doing drive-bys, and they don't get no time in jail. That's why the YN word is now a big thing. It's trendy because our young brothers are doing it now. So what I'm saying is they need to be more, there need to be more than just statistical numbers that they're putting out here and trying to hope that we believe them. Because when you don't enforce the law, the numbers go down. Meaning that if you have a shortage of law enforcement officers, you have a shortage of people calling and reporting crimes that are committed, or you have a shortage of arresting people for certain crimes, then you can fluff the numbers any way you can. I want to hear from the people who live there. I want people to physically go there and tell me it's safe. When the Memorial Day weekend, they got 70-some people getting shot and people getting shot in the head with stray bullets. And that's just in one city, Stephen A. Not all over the country where these black communities are. Now, the authoritative part of it, or the
authoritarianism. Yep.
Authoritarian.
Yes,
I'm saying the
you
word
got
wrong.
it. You got it. You got it. You got it.
So if they're saying that he is acting in a nature that's not geared toward or appropriate for his position, then I also ask people to say, what exactly is he doing? Is he saying that black people shouldn't be able to live in Chicago? Is he hurting black people and saying black people shouldn't be able to go to schools, or he's doing something to thwart the black community? He's saying, I want the community to be safe. I'm deploying these people to help young brothers not get murdered every day in the streets. So I would argue, what is he actually doing? If he was doing something nefarious against black people, then I would say, yeah, our antenna should be popping up that maybe he can't be trusted. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, Stephen A., is I don't think he's doing anything against black folks. It's that we don't have enough black folks standing up that are in positions of power to do this. Why does Trump have to do it? Why couldn't Obama do it? Why couldn't some of these black leaders say, enough is enough, doggone it? Too many young brothers are dying in the streets. 15 is too many. When are we going to say enough is enough? Because, Stephen A., we don't see this in the white community, not to the degree that we see in the black community. We don't see drive-by shooting. We don't see Memorial Day weekends where 70-some white people getting shot. We don't see a term that white people use for YNs. We don't see them running and ransacking stores.
Why do you think we're seeing it? But why do you
online?
But why do you think we're seeing it in our communities? Let me ask your perspective about that. I mean, since you brought that up, why are we seeing it? Why are we seeing it in our community?
It's culture, Stephen A. It's culture. Like, I remember when I was young, and I used to believe this stuff. I hated white people because they were the enemy. The white folks don't like you. I hated white people. So I grew up, and if the environment is anything like when I grew up, this is why it's like this. Young brothers I just go to school with, the kids that went to school, they played sports, they did well, they had a daddy at home. The dudes that didn't do well didn't have anybody at home, and they didn't have no structure. So they can stay out all night. They'll sell drugs and sell dope to help their mama and do all this stuff. Daddy wasn't having that. You think you're going to cuss in the house with my daddy? Like, you crazy. You think you're not going to wash the dishes and fold the clothes? You think you're not going to wipe that tub out when you finish taking a bath? Fathers in the community is the deterrent of young boys losing themselves and being hyper emotional and doing things that you would never do with a daddy at your house. So that, and then the glorification of violence. When I was young, I was about, I was 8 smoking weed with my cousins. Okay. I ain't getting arrested for it. That was cool. I didn't want to be like my dad, right? My dad would go to work every day. I didn't want to be like black dudes, that corny dudes with their pants around their waist, being a doctor, a lawyer. I didn't want to be like them. I want to be like the dope boy in the community.
When did it change for you? When did it change for you?
When I went to college. It's when I went to college. Let me say that. When I was younger, I joined Five Deuce Hoover Crip because my cousins were in Five Deuce Hoover Crip. They jumped me and my brother in on the couch. Now, of course, they treat us a little lighter than you do in a real gang jump in because they didn't hit us in the face because they didn't want my mom and them to know we got jumped in. Mm-hmm. So we got jumped in the Five Deuce Hoover Crip. We banging until my mom and them found out. Then they threw our rags away that we were hanging out of the back pocket. When I was in high school, I got tats all over my arm. I got gold teeth in my mouth, sagging my pants. It wasn't, Stephen A., until I went to college and I was out of the community and I was able to look outside looking in and being like, wait a minute, this ain't normal that people ain't got no daddy at home. This ain't normal that people are Fadu Super Crip gang banging. We saying the N word every day. I got gold teeth on I got Young Savage tattooed on my stomach. This ain't normal. And it's not even healthy. And so when I enjoy being safe and not having to worry about wearing the wrong colors, going down the street and you got the wrong colors in your shoelaces when you got your brand new J's. Somebody may charge you up over it. Somebody may shoot you. Somebody may rob you. They may think you banging. You may get caught up at the convenience store because some dudes got beef and get shot. When I moved out of that environment, I realized, Stephen A., like, that's not normal, bro. The domestic violence. Me and my cousin them used to fight all the time. You say something wrong, we throwing hands. That's not normal. And it took me to kind of get out of that environment to realize, man, I don't think I want to live like this. And there's stuff that I see white people doing that if we only had the mindset and we did that, we would flourish way more than we do. One is working together.
Right.
I'll let you ask questions.
Let me chime in with this. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with most of it. What I do think, however, is that the danger, and I will openly admit I struggle. That's why I like talking to you. I like talking to liberals and conservatives and getting back and forth, because it edifies me. It just makes me better. So I appreciate y'all. Where it's a challenge for me, officer. On one hand, I can look at you and I can say most of what you're saying is absolutely right. I know from personal experience growing up in Hollis, Queens, growing up in the streets of New York City, it is what it is. You're absolutely right about that. The flip side to it, however, is this. If you allow the Trumps of the world, the Trump administrations of the world, the Trump surrogates and acolytes to spew that stuff, right? It becomes distractionary because focusing on that makes you say, yeah, I got to vote for them again. Make sure, the liberals ain't back in office and they stay in office. And then, you know what? Tariff wars, all right? That we don't know whether or not that's necessarily going to work out for it. We're getting a whole bunch of pledges, from corporations, companies, countries, etc. But that doesn't mean it's going to reach fruition. There's so many things. The war in Ukraine and Russia, that hasn't ended. Israel and Hamas, even though we understand what Israel has been doing. There's so many different things to point to that hasn't come to fruition in a fashion and a manner that the Trump administration said so, that pointing to these things that you are legitimately pointing out forces and compels folks to say, we don't need the liberals back in office that played a significant role in letting all of this happen. We need to keep those cats in office and they're not held accountable for what promises were made but not necessarily kept. How do you, as a Black conservative, answer that?
Yes, Stephen A. I think that it's very simple. I know that Trump is not perfect, and I know that he's acting in good faith, and that's all I expect from any president, because we don't live in a dictatorship, and he can't do everything he say he want to do at every time because there's layers to it. He's getting sued in courts all over the country because he wants to deport certain people, so he can't get his agenda done. When he wanted to build a wall last time, he couldn't get the funding because Congress wouldn't pass a budget for the funding. And so I understand that every president is not going to do everything, but the way I evaluate it, Stephen A., is in good faith. Are you acting in good faith? Is the tariff war something that Donald Trump is doing in good faith that's going to benefit America? And I think that it has. We've negotiated so many more deals. We've gotten so many countries to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into America. And so I think it's going on the right path, and nobody's willing to touch it except Donald Trump. They're just willing to kick the thing down the bucket down the road until somebody's have to say, we have to do the hard thing to get us to the place that we need to be in America. And go ahead.
Is it acting in good faith if you throwing out 4 or 5 different executive orders, scaling back our connection to Black history, like with the Smithsonian Museum and other things where those executive orders were being put out there? You've got Black folks that feel like this man is trying to detach us from Black history, from the world knowing just as much as we've always known about Black history, or the more that we should know. When you hear about things like that, is that really looking out for our best interest, or is it looking out for his?
Right. Stephen A., if it was correct that Donald Trump was trying to eliminate Black history from the Smithsonian or history in general, trying to degrade Black existence, I would never support that dude a day in my life. I'll get on your show right now and say, screw that guy. And I don't support him, and why I never vote for him. The problem is that it's a conflation, and some people have a vested interest in saying things that may not necessarily be true. Okay. There is no evidence that Donald Trump is trying to eliminate Black history. It's impossible to eliminate Black history. It is impossible. Our stamp is on everything that exists. You can't change that just because, even if you try to do it through the Smithsonian, that's not the only place where history is espoused. I mean, or exposed.
Right.
That's not the only place that history can be learned. We still teach Black history in college. We still got HBCUs. You can still go online right now and learn anything you want to learn about history. But the truth is, he's not doing that at the Smithsonian. What happened is they're not telling the full story. They're telling a story that seems to be biased against white people and making it seem like white people they created slavery. White people was the only people that owned slaves in America. White people, it's this whole anti-white sentiment that's not the full projection of what history was. There were a lot of Black people that owned slaves. The first legal slave owner in the United States history was a Black man, Anthony Johnson. So, and we can go down the list. People don't know much about Harriet Tubman. They didn't know that she was married to a Black man who was a free Black man at the time when she started the Underground Railroad. Actually, her husband told her that not to do it, which now he looked like a coward for doing. But think of how does that work? All the Black people that own Black slaves, the Juneteenth. And this is the things that I'm like, why is this not in the Smithsonian? And Juneteenth, people think that Juneteenth, being that in Galveston, Texas, was the last remnant of Black slaves that were released and freed. That wasn't true. It wasn't until a year later that the Choctaw Indian finally released their slaves. Indians own slaves. So when we talk about slavery, when we talk about all this, we have to talk about it in the context of reality, or we develop hatred and misinformation. Slavery wasn't about race. Anybody that learned or studied slavery, I studied Africana studies when I was in college. Slavery was not about race. Slavery was about availability of cheap labor. Most of the slaves went to South America. Not most of them didn't even come to America. The North didn't have slaves. Only the South had slaves. We fought a war, the Civil War. The portion of the United States that never have slaves, that Black people were free in the colonies, they won the war. So, it's a lot of nuance there, Stephen A.
Understood.
Who helped Harriet Tubman free the Black people from slavery? It was white folks. So there's a lot of history there that I think that Donald Trump is trying to correct to make sure that we're not overemphasizing hatred towards one group when it's not necessary. But if Donald Trump was doing it, I wouldn't support him whatsoever. I think Black people need to stop listening to naysayers online and people who have a vested interest to hate the man. Go look at it for yourself. Go look at what Donald Trump is trying to do at the Smithsonian. Go look at it. Go read it. People don't read what he's trying to remove.
So last question to you. With that being said, how are you feeling? Do you think we're in a better place now or worse than when he took office, considering the direction the country is going in? And especially since you got cats like Steve Bannon, along with others, talking about him circumventing the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution and getting a third term, in office. I mean, your thoughts about that? I'll give you the last word on it.
Yeah, if Donald Trump tried to seek a third term in office, I will come on your show and I will tell the world that I'll never support that and I'll never vote for him for a third term. That's not the way our government has worked. That's not the way it should work. You get 2 terms, you out. Unfortunately, he missed the middle term. He got 2 terms, not consecutively. He's out. Now it's time to get another person when Donald Trump is no longer there, and everybody got to compete. You compete for our vote and we'll get to vote. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. It just is no Democrat that's saying anything that make any sense about anything in America today, in my personal opinion. So I don't foresee them ever getting my vote, but I will never accept that. The America should never accept that. And if Donald Trump ever attempt to do it, I'm going to call him out for it. It's not right. Do I think that America is better now than it was under Joe Biden? 1,000%. And I think we're headed in the right direction. Just the securing of the United States border, huge. Getting these illegal criminals out of our country, huge.
But a lot of them ain't criminals. A lot of them ain't criminals. I mean,
but they still here illegally, and they shouldn't even been here. And the reason that it makes me upset, because I know a lot of people who came here illegally. How in the world do the people pay all that money to come here illegally and wait 15 years and 10 years and 5 years, and somebody just sneak in the country? The people that did it right way, they want to be a part of the American dream too. They needed a job too. So why is it fair that they get to come here illegally? I say this all the time. When I went to the university, at the University of Arizona, of course I was on scholarship, but I earned my way to that university. Right. Many people had to pay thousands of dollars a semester just to go to the university, plus housing and all this stuff. Just imagine somebody walk in the university and take a seat and they get to stay there just because they just walked in the room in the lecture hall, and then they get to participate in class and they get all this stuff funded. That's crazy. You don't get to come to America and take resources from people who paid to be here, people who did it the legal way, the American citizens. We could be helping homeless. Instead, we're giving hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal aliens that shouldn't even be here. So the majority of them are criminals doing heinous crimes, murder, rape, you name it. Then other people get caught up in that. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to go and get deported, you should come here in the right way. One of the girls that was a friend of mine in Arizona, she owned a sushi place. I didn't know she was illegal. They deported her. She had a deportation order for 20 years. Hey, I love the sushi joint. She was a great person. I would fight for her to have a right to be here in America, because she's the type of person that we need in America, who's paying taxes, creating jobs, staying out of the criminal justice system. But at the end of the day, you had 20 years to do this, and you didn't do it. I know people that did it, so it's not fair to them. Donald Trump with the securing of the border, illegal aliens, getting investments of billions of dollars back to the United States of America, peace deals that he signed and chartered with so many different countries that have been, they actually want him to be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Hopefully we come to a conclusion in Israel. Hopefully we come to a conclusion in Ukraine. He's just one person. He can't do it all, but all of the things that he has been doing has been tremendously effective. And I love the fact that he's correcting the script and not letting us go down this woke path of advocating based on somebody's race and not the content of their character. DEI was wrong.
I got you.
And we don't need to do that. There's qualified Black people that can be pilots. There's qualified brothers and sisters that are smart
and I'm with
and that have Ivy League degrees and can do all of this stuff. We don't need y'all to be trying to play white guilt and put us in the places that some of us aren't qualified for.
We don't disagree with that in terms of theory and in your premise. What I would say, however, is that you can't turn around. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about him. You can't turn around and you eradicate these programs, and then when you hire people, quote unquote, the right way, everybody is somebody that look like him, that shares his same pigmentation and hue and what have you. Because don't tell me ain't a whole bunch of qualified Black folks. You and I both know. You understand? And then when folks are getting furloughed, they're getting laid off, they're losing their jobs or whatever, the implication is that they only got a job because of DEI or something along those lines, as opposed to actually being qualified. We can't let them get away with trying to disseminate that kind of message. Go ahead,
Stephen,
real quick though. Go ahead.
I think we agree on this to a large degree, because I do believe that there should be more representation of Black people in the Trump administration. I do.
And beyond.
The only unfortunate part is that there's not a lot of Black people that are conservatives, or at least to say they're conservatives. And there's a lot of Black people that don't want to be associated with Trump because they're gonna get killed by their own people if they somehow associated with him. I mean, look at what happened to I forget his name now. It just escaped me. One of the greatest men to ever live, to ever do brain surgery.
Yeah, you told Ben Carson. Ben Carson.
Look what happened to Ben Carson. His legacy is tarnished because he somehow was associated with Trump. So I think there's a lot of Black people that are afraid, but I do agree with you. I see the same thing you see, Stephen A. The world you can't make it up. I think there's a lot more qualified Black people that should be in the Trump administration. Whether you have them in the press corps, whether you have them as your right-hand man, your chief of staff. I mean, I think there's more qualified Black people, but we can't complain when we too afraid to stand up and be conservative.
Gotcha.
We can't complain when we don't even want nothing to do with Trump because we're afraid of our image. So in part, I think that's why we see it. But then also, I think that the DEI thing is just like Stephen A. When Joe Biden said, "I'm gonna pick a Black woman for Supreme Court justice."
Couldn't do that. It was the wrong thing for him to say.
Set us back, just like
he should have
DEI
never said
set
that.
us back. What do you say?
He should have never said that. He should have never said that. He should have
don't
hired the
have to
best
say
qualified
that
person, and they just so happen to be Black, as opposed to him saying that in advance, because it opened the floodgates for the conservatives to turn around and do the same.
Right. But to think about it, Stephen A., now people question if that woman qualified or not, because he go, "I'm gonna pick a Black woman." Yeah. All he had to do, even if he was gonna pick a Black woman,
just do it.
That's why these people don't really care about us. They just talking. He could have said, "I'm gonna pick the most he could have built it up. I'm gonna pick the most qualified person that's ever been picked in the history of the Supreme Court justice, and just pick a Black woman." There you go. DEI, Stephen A. DEI. Why do we need a program to say we need to hire more Black people? Just hire more Black people. Quit saying that we needed some number of representation.
Because listen, I gotta go. I gotta go, but I'm gonna end it by saying this, because systemically it's proven that unless it's enforced, it won't happen, because folks will always find a way to take care of their own. The power structure that exists who don't look. That would be the answer to that question. But I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of how it should be. Ain't no question about that. Look, man, I could talk to you all day. This ain't gonna be the only time you on this show. I'm happily going to come on your show whenever you call me. I look forward to it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I gotta bounce out of here though, man. That's why I'm rushing you off, because I gotta run right now. All right.
Stephen A., God bless you, man. Thanks for having me.
God bless, man. Take it easy.